Welcome to today's Daily Fire. Today's topic is this: I'm not sure. Sit back and relax, and welcome to today's show. So, I have been in the personal development space for quite a few years, actually, and I've been a coach, a mentor for a lot of people. I've been an entrepreneur. I ran really two main companies. One was a bakery, and the other one was a production company. We did concerts and music festivals, things like that. Both of those have since been closed or sold or just done with, right? I don't do those anymore, and I really just spend my time now helping other people try to figure out how their crazy mind works. And there's a topic I don't talk about very often, and I haven't talked about it in quite a few years. And last Friday, God put it on my heart that this needed to be shared. This message needed to be shared. And it's been interesting because it's a message I didn't really want to share. I didn't really want to talk about it. And at the same time, I do. And I love talking about it. It's just this weird dichotomy inside of my mind of what it is. And it's really what it's centered around. I think maybe this time of year is why it's coming up so prevalently, because this time of year is the hardest time of year for anyone who's gone through what I'm talking about. And what I'm speaking about is I'm speaking to all the parents out there who have lost a child. Right. And I remember when my son died. After he died, I remember thinking that I was kind of special, meaning that just nobody was around, like no one else went through what I went through, right? That the problem I was dealing with and the pits and the darkness that I was going through, that no one else was. And yeah, my pit might have been my pit, but what I learned is that there's actually a lot of people that have to bury their children. And I found people all over the internet. And I found people in real life. I found all these things, and everybody dealt with it kind of like in their own way. And yeah, we have the grieving process, right, with the 5 or the 7 steps, depending on who you talk to. But the reality is that's just kind of a framework for trying to justify where you're at. And that what I had discovered is that I got stuck in the grieving process a lot. Right? It took me about 10 years. It took me about 10 years to fully, truly embrace and accept that, yeah, my son was dead, and that I had to go on, and life had to continue. And I had, a surviving son, and I had a wife, and I had a life, and I needed to make money, and I needed to pay the bills. I needed to get groceries. I needed to, take my other son to soccer, and I needed to do all these things. And there was normal stuff, right? I had to pay bills. I had to they're just life. Life was still happening, and it was the hardest thing for me to go through. And it took me 10 years. It took me 10 years to finally get to a place where I could truly feel like I could stand up again as a man, as a father, as a husband, and be me, right? And it wasn't just 10 years was the time. It wasn't just that 10 years had passed that caused this. I had to go to war. All the resources, everything that existed at the time to help, and I'm sure it's great, and they're great people, but they are what they are, and I just found no solace in it. I found no value in it, and I had to hunt down how on earth do you go on after that? How do you get up? How do you care? How do you have dreams? How do you have desires? How do you not just think about your son or your daughter? And for me, my son, how did I not think about my son and just break me down? And there were definitely times that did happen. And there were times that I had a really hard time. I remember when he passed away, I would spend almost, I don't know how long this went on for, but I would leave my house at the nighttime, and I would drive to the cemetery, and then I would just lay down on his gravesite, and I would just have my arm on his little marker headstone thing, and I would just lay there. I would just lay there, and I would fall asleep. Eventually, sleep would get me, and I would wake up to the sprinklers, right, in the cemetery turning on. And I did this more times than I can even understand, even imagine. And I didn't know I was searching for something. I remember for so long, I left his car seat in the car, and I would drive, and I would reach my hand back, and I would put my hand inside of his car seat and just hold it there. Because when he was alive, I would soothe him with that. I would put my hand back, and for some reason, he liked to suck on my pinky. right? My pinky finger. So I'd stick my pinky finger back there and just a little tip of it, and he would just sit and it would soothe him and help comfort him. And there were so many things I look back, but I think the biggest tragedy was the fact of how alone I felt. Like I was devastated. There were more nights than days than I can remember that I didn't even want to get out of bed. I didn't want to be alive. I remember thinking several times driving my car down the street that I'm like, if I just didn't turn, right? The freeway's turning up ahead, and I'm like, if I just keep going straight and just slam right into the barrier, would it end? Would this all be over? Would the pain go away? Would the absolute angst go away? And there came this point where I knew I had to do something because I had another son, I had family, I had life, and I couldn't just bury my head in the sand, even though I was a young father dealing with this tragedy. And I just went to work to try to figure that out. Like I just went to work to try to figure myself out and try to figure out, how do I take my son's memory and how do I take him and his little short life and all of the beauty that was his life, and how do I cherish that? How do I take those memories? And there was a lot of things I figured out. It took me a really long time to do it, but I figured out how to not only stand up again but to thrive. And now the memory of my son is not a sad one. It's just not. There's just nothing but I'm so grateful for the time I had with him. I'm so grateful that he is mine and that he chose me as his dad. And like I chose him as my son, and we didn't get it very long together, but went much shorter than I would have wanted. Obviously, at any point, it would be much shorter than I wanted. But to be able to just like have memories of him and to love it. And I love talking about him. I love showing people pictures of him. I love being like, yeah, this is my son, Micah. Like, this is him. Like, here he is. Like I just love it. And what is so tragic to me is I still know people, and I see them all the time who they don't have that, right? The loss is so real to them that it just destroys them. And they turn to things that I turn to. They turn to alcohol. They turn to pills. They turn to food. They turn to work. They turn to working out. Anything to numb having to face the reality that this is a thing. And it's heartbreaking to me to watch people deal with this loss and never find a pathway through it. And they live their entire life a shell. A lot of people I watch, they just take a part of them and they lock it up into a little box. They put like chains around it. They put padlocks. They put every lock you can think of, and then they push it down as far as they possibly can. And they just pretend it's not there. Not realizing that they're literally walking around like they've locked up who they are. Because you can't lock up the love for your child and not lock up you. It's impossible. And when you lock up you, you've locked up everything. And now not only do you not have these fond, amazing memories of your child, but you've lost yourself in the process, and you live a life just waiting for your turn to die. 100 years from now, we're all going to be in the grave. Every single one of us watching this video, listening to my voice, you're going to be dead. 100 years from now, everyone you know, the whole world that you know, will no longer be here. It's a weird thought, right? And the question becomes, is there a way that while you're here to like experience life again, to have joy again, to have peace again, to find yourself again, to find God again, and ultimately to find purpose. And what's crazy is my purpose in my life is actually directly tied to my son, Micah. It's not in spite of it, it's because of it. It's because of what happened. It's because of him. It's because of those last moments that I got while he was on this earth, that I was the one who got a hold of him when he took his last breath. And although that was like insanely hard to do, and I can't even, like even now, my mind tries to go back there, and I can't even imagine doing that now. Like I think of my little 12-year-old girl or my 21-year-old son, and I think of them, and it just wrecks me to think of that ever happening to them and me having to go through that again. But I also know that I have so much to give the world. And this is what I'm called to share. And I don't know why I'm called to share it. I'm not sure who needs to hear it. I don't know why they need to hear it. Like I don't like doing it. I don't want to sit here and just, but at the same time I do. I love sharing my son's message. We had this really cool event a couple years ago, and one of the guys that was at this event, we just started calling him Coach Micah because my son was there, and I felt his spirit was so strong, and some of the other men felt that it was amazing. I'm not going to get into it on this show, but it was one of the most amazing things that had happened, and they coined the phrase Coach Micah, and they actually made shirts about him, and they had said Coach Micah on them, and he made the shirts and gave them out to everybody at the next event, and it was so special. And it really was. It was like my little boy's there, and he's watching over. And it's a really hard path to get to where you can see that. It's not something that's easy. It's not for the faint of heart. Most people that start into this journey of trying to rediscover who they are, they end up losing themselves along the way. And I've watched it happen to so many people. So anybody listening to this, I want you to know right now, there's hope. Like there is a way. There is a light that comes from this dark. Your light is actually found through the dark. And although you want to avoid the pain, you want to avoid the hurt, your liberation actually comes through embracing it. Instead of pretending it didn't happen, or instead of trying to not think about what happened, instead of trying to push them out and lock them up into the little box, it's opening up the box and being able to actually see and to feel. And through that, you actually get to see them. You don't want to block them out. Like if you think about them right now, I want you to just look at this, like they're trying to comfort you and you're not letting them. Imagine if you could let them. Imagine if you could open it up. But I understand because there's so much fear involved in opening it up, because if you open it up, that means you have to feel it again. And maybe you blocked it out. Maybe you're really good at that. Maybe you blocked it out a lot. You pushed it way down. And it's been years and years and years. And the fear of dusting off the cobwebs and opening up that box, it's a pretty real fear. Because you don't know what will happen. And you don't know what it'll be like to feel it. But I want you to just consider for just a moment that you're supposed to feel it. You're supposed to feel them. You're supposed to hold them. So we look at this time of year. It's less than a week till Christmas. A time where families get together, families love together, they just spend time together, and it's a beautiful time of year, right? And some families are not complete. Some families are getting together in the holidays and somebody's missing. Somebody doesn't show up. Somebody doesn't sit at the table. Somebody doesn't have a plate, right? And that's a real hard place to be. So though the rest of you guys who are watching this that maybe aren't that mom or dad, and I'll speak really to the dads who you're not that dad. If that's not you, look around at your little ones. And I'd do the same thing. I'd look at my son Eli and realize that he needed his dad too. And I couldn't lose myself in the bottom of an alcohol bottle. I couldn't. I couldn't lose myself in pills. I couldn't lose myself in making money. I couldn't lose me in trying to find ways to numb the pain. Because if I did that, then he lost me too. And then not only did my son Eli would end up losing a brother, he would also lose his dad. And that's just crazy when you think about it. So I want you to think about this today. What can you do this holiday season? Who can you connect with this holiday season? Maybe there's something you need to do, right? Maybe you haven't lost a child, but there's someone you need to connect with, because you never know when it's going to be your last chance to do it. And this is the greatest time of year to do it. If nothing else comes from Christmas 2023, maybe this is the year that you finally connect with the person, that there's a rift in between your relationship, but it needs to be healed. Let this be that year. Let this be the year that you can break down some of the walls and the barriers that you have built up. And I can promise you, having gone through this as long as I have, part of my story I haven't shared with you yet, that doesn't end there, right? I've lost more than one child. That was just the first one, Micah. But I've also lost another son named Jacob and a daughter named Rachel. So I have more children living in heaven waiting for their dad than that live on this earth right now. So I know it's dark, I know it's hard, but you can do it. So if this message resonates with you, and more importantly, if you know someone who's hurting right now, you know somebody who just needs to know there's somebody else out there that got them and understands them, share this with them. Send it to them in a DM. Like have them, like help them. Like, and they might act like they're strong. They might act like they have it all figured out. They might act like everything's okay. And it might have been years. It could have been 5 years, 10 years ago. And they might act like it's okay. But I'm here to tell you right now, it is not okay. And they are not okay. So do what you can do. If this video is one of those things, great. If it's just you, give them a call, send them a text, something like that. So that's all I got for you today is fire. And I appreciate you guys joining me in this journey. As always, this is your boy Trevor J. White reminding you, I don't know. I don't really like my sign off anymore. I don't really know. I don't know. Kind of changing this up a little bit. So no sign off today because I'm not sure what it's going to be. Just share this up with somebody who needs it today. And God bless. Merry Christmas.